Good afternoon. We're coming on the air now with breaking news. President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen. ABC News can report now that President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has reached a plea deal with prosecutors on several counts of campaign finance violations, bank fraud, and tax evasion. Of course, Michael Cohen is President Trump's longtime personal attorney and counsel. In the 2016 campaign, he was involved in payments to Stormy Daniels as part of a non-disclosure agreement about a possible affair with President Trump. Also discussions with Karen McDougal, who had also alleged an affair with President Trump. Now he has agreed, we believe, to plead guilty to charges of campaign finance violations, bank fraud, and tax evasion. According to this plea from our sources, this would involve a significant monetary forfeiture and jail time for Mr. Cohen. I want to bring in our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, for more on this. And Pierre, from what we know about this, this could be filed as early as today. Of course, up until the moment it's filed, it's also possible that one or both parties could back out. But we believe an agreement has been reached. And this is significant here, and it would include jail time for Michael Cohen, but perhaps most significant there, those two campaign finance law violations. Of course, that involves dealings with President Trump.
That's right, George. Again, we believe that this deal is imminent. Of course, either party could back out in the final moments, but we believe that this deal is imminent, that he's agreed in principle. And you're right, the campaign finance violations are potentially very interesting because they involve, hush money involving women who allegedly had relationships with the President of the United States. And again, the timing was keeping this information out of the press before the election, George. That's why it's key. So we don't know if his cooperation will have to deal with that, George.
Right, and then potentially then the payments he made would be a campaign finance violation. I also want to bring in Chris Christie, former governor of New Jersey, former U.S. prosecutor as well, U.S. attorney in New Jersey, has been a longtime ally also of President Trump. Significant move here today, Chris.
It is a significant move, George, and I think the real question to be answered now is, does this plea include cooperation by Michael Cohen or not? Is this a non-cooperating plea where he's just looking at credit for accepting responsibility, which would reduce his potential jail sentence, or is he in fact cooperating with the Southern District of New York?
That is an important point right there, and on that point, even if this is not a cooperating agreement, it does not preclude cooperating down the road, correct?
It doesn't preclude it, although, George, you would, if you were the defendant here, you'd want to get credit for that cooperation right up front now while you were making the deal. That would impact how many counts you'd have to plead guilty to and what level you would potentially be sentenced at. And so my guess is that if this is a cooperating deal, that has already been struck. And if it's not, then that's something that's going to be very significant going down the road.
Talk about the significance if it's not a cooperating deal.
Well, because, again, that makes it a lot more less problematic for the Trump campaign. If Michael Cohen is not going to cooperate and provide information to the government that would put more flesh on potential campaign finance violations, that would make potentially any case against anyone else in the Trump campaign much more difficult to pursue and ultimately prove. With the cooperation of Michael Cohen, assuming it was honest and corroboratable cooperation, that would make it potentially easier.
I want to bring in Cecilia Vega from the White House as well. Cecilia, you know the White House has been nervous about this for some time.
Exactly, George. And like Chris Christie just said, we don't know about cooperation, but that is one of the things that people here inside this White House fear the most, that Michael Cohen cooperating with Robert Mueller's team would be a huge blow to this West Wing. But just Michael Cohen being at the center of this investigation has made people here very nervous. This was a president. It's hard to convey exactly how much in the inner circle Michael Cohen was for President Trump, for candidate Trump, for then businessman Donald Trump. He was in the innermost inner circle. He was his longtime lawyer. He was his longtime fixer. He was his right-hand man. He knows about everything. And this has been a very fractured and damaged relationship. Of course, after that raid on Cohen's home and businesses where they seized 13 cell phones and millions of files back in April, their relationship took a turn south. The president had said that Michael Cohen would never flip on him, that they were that close. in their relationship. But as we know, Michael Cohen told you, George, in that interview this summer that, in fact, his loyalty lies with his family and with his country. So certainly today there are people nervous here waiting to find out what this deal entails and how much, if in fact, Michael Cohen will be cooperating with Robert Mueller's team.
And of course, the focus there on those campaign finance violations, especially having to do with Stormy Daniels. Michael Cohen had admitted making payments to Stormy Daniels of $130,000 in October 2016 before the campaign. And you remember well President Trump on Air Force One denying at first any knowledge of that payment. Let's listen.
Did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth or allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Do you know where he got the money to make that payment?
No, I don't know.
Of course, Cecilia Vega, the White House later had to admit, President Trump had to admit that he did know about that payment.
He had flatly denied knowing about that payment, George, and then it came out just a few months ago that, in fact, he acknowledged that this money was reimbursed to his lawyer for that $130,000. It's not just that. We're talking about Karen McDougal, a former Playboy playmate as well, and that money paid to AMI. You know, that tape that came out where we heard the president and his then lawyer, Michael Cohen, talking about a payment, as many people call it, hush money. The campaign had long insisted that president had not had an affair. I'm assuming that is still the case, that is the insistence. They've sort of stopped talking about that case. But there is a tape out there where we hear the president and his lawyer talking about that payment.
In fact, Cecilia, we have that tape. Let's play that as well.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, you know, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with
So what are we going to pay?
funding. Yes, and it's all the stuff. All the stuff, because you know you never know where that company, you never know where he's going to be.
Gets it, but
Correct. So I'm all over that, and I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be.
listen. What financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay with cash.
No. I got no.
Hey, Noel, how are you?
And I want to bring in Pierre Thomas for more on this as well. And Pierre, we also know that the Offices of American Media, which did reach an agreement with Karen McDougal, have also been raided by the Justice Department.
Well, they want to get as much information from them as possible. And, George, one of the things that, again, we don't know the specifics yet of this deal in terms of how much cooperation there will be or not. But we have had from sources that we trust that Cohen has signaled that he wanted to cooperate, that he wanted to share what he knew to prosecutors to possibly help his situation.
Chris Christie, let's take a step back here before we go as we gather more information. What we're hearing now is a plea agreement from the president's former personal attorney on the same day that his former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, expected to face a verdict perhaps as early as this afternoon from a jury. The president has got to be feeling the pressure there, and we've seen it in his tweets.
Well, listen, George, I think a couple of things first. I think we got to remember, too, any cooperation at the moment is with the Southern District of New York and not with Bob Mueller. Remember that Bob Mueller sent this case to the Southern District of New York because he thought it was beyond his mandate that he had gotten from Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. And as for the president, listen, I think, the bottom line is this. It's never good, ever good, to have people who have been associated with you like this, like Michael Cohen, in as close a position he's been in, having to plead guilty to crimes, and especially, it appears now, crimes that are associated with your presidential campaign. So this is not a good day at the White House, but let us not also overreact. At this point, there's nothing that implicates the president or anyone else other than Michael Cohen. And so it's something where everybody jumps to conclusions on this. I learned as a prosecutor, you take this stuff one step at a time, but today is a step.
And we're taking one step at a time as well. Chris Christie, Pierre Thomas, Cecilia Vega, thank you very much again. Michael Cohen has reached an agreement, we believe, with prosecutors in New York, a plea agreement over campaign finance and tax law and bank fraud violations. We're going to continue to report this throughout the day. We'll be back, World News Tonight, with David Muir, and on the air again